Hey there, this is Ill Factor from beatacademy.com. Excited once again to be back here on the Recording Revolution channel. So thank you, Graham, once again for just letting me just take over for this past month. I hope that I've been able to share from my years of producing music for a living with you guys and helping you take your next step forward with your music. So last week, I shared about taking an idea and fleshing that out to a song skeleton or a demo, creating a demo from an idea. And that is structuring out the arrangement and getting it ready. Now, this week, I want to pick up where we left off and finalize that demo to a final produced song. So let me just play you where we left off. So this is where we left off last week. And we basically kept that same progression all throughout the verses, pre-chorus, but just mapped out the basic demo song skeleton. Now, let's check out where we're at with the final product. Driving to the end. I stand in my ground. Stand in my ground. Stand in my ground. Do you see through it? Always outnumbered. So lots to cover. Let's dive right in. So my workflow and my process from transitioning from a demo or song skeleton to a final song ready to be mixed and mastered is usually broken into two phases. The first one, which I think is the most important, is the melodic journey. I'm not trying to force a melody to fit the demo arrangement. I want the arrangement to really bow down to a melody, right? The melodic journey that I'm taking or listening on. And so even though the instrumental that we left off with last week is it's good, having a great vocal melody on there can really help it take it to the finish line and to the next level. So I want to make sure I start fiddling around with and coming across with a great vocal melody. And that's why it's great to leave the demo sparse, not to fill it up with a lot of things, because you want to give space to work in that melody. Sometimes when you overproduce the demos and song skeleton, the temptation is, well, I put all this stuff on there. I don't want to remove it. So I'm going to have to force the melody to fit there. No, keep it sparse so that your melody will help lead the parade and not the other way around. So that allows me to kind of move the arrangement any which way I want and have the melody fit, have the arrangement fit with the melody rather than the other way around. And then my second phase is where I do a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff, and that is my automation stage. That is where I'm doing automation with delays, reverbs, and maybe adding some effects and cutting and chopping up things that really help build tension and release throughout the arrangement. So here at the bottom of my project, I've imported the stems from last week, and this is our demo version. This is the same arrangement and layout that we left off with, and I just grouped them all together. So I'll solo that. And here, the verse, we start the verse. So we have about like eight bars of an intro. And if you can see that contrast to my final arrangement, I decided to just cut that down because I just want to get to the chorus already. So I cut that down, gave a nice little 4-bar intro instead, and then go right into the verse. And also too, we've got a different chord progression happening from the verses to the chorus. So I'll just play the demo version of our verse. So we have that progression happening throughout this whole phase here. And what I would do is start to loop that and start working on vocal melodies that would work with that progression. And so I'm going to go ahead and mute the demo and then start taking it over here to the first verse. So let me just play our final arrangement here and see what we have. Always outnumbered, but never outgunned when it's time to rise. Feeling like I'm going, yeah, going in the lion's den tonight. I feel like I'm losing again. So big difference, but the bones are still there. Now, what happened? How did we arrive from that demo to where we're at now? Well, I'll kind of backtrack a little bit of the thought process. As I mentioned earlier, I start looping this section here, my first verse, to start thinking about what vocal melodies and where I'm going to be going. And so I always have this rough vocal track, and this is me singing into a handheld microphone or even this dynamic mic here, and just start coming up with vocal melodies. So here are all the different type of takes that I have. And once I come across a melody that I really like, that I feel like, all right, this is kind of cool, I start to then carve out the arrangement so that it better supports that vocal melody. So when I came up with the white verse lead track here, when I go, this is definitely the one I want to go with, I started stripping away the arrangement at that part so that we can have a more dynamic journey towards the chorus. And what I mean by that is I started muting out drums. In our demo version here, we had all the drums come in, the kick, the claps, and all the layers that happen in there. So what I did here was I just made sure that I had just my kick and the clap and a tambourine that will double with the clap as well. There's no bass, and I introduced an 808 bass line that can really just get some nice beefy sub, but there's no bass happening for that first verse. And then it comes and it introduces itself in the pre-chorus, which is really good because you can feel, frequency wise, you just feel that bottom coming in and it just starts to move the track really well. Then we start to unmute some of the other drum tracks. You can see here that the loop has been muted and I bring it back in and I start to incorporate more elements until we finally get to the chorus where everybody's in the picture. So that helps just dynamically structure the arrangement. But let's talk about this new instrument that I added, which is the guitar part. Now, I had the basses going on as we did in the original. I had them going on right here. But then I wanted to kind of, the same thing I did with the drums and adding the bass, I wanted to savor that sound for the chorus. Because if I only hear it in the chorus, it's just going to make it that much exciting and that much explosive. So I didn't want to give it away just yet. And so I thought, what other instrumentation can I add? And I was experimenting and I used this guitar part here and it worked really, really well. I just fell in love with it and decided to go with that to create this nice contrast between the verse, pre-chorus, and the chorus. So for the guitar part, I'm using a Native Instruments library. It's a Contact, which is a sampling library by Native Instruments. It's called the Electric Sunburst. It's a great instrument, especially if you don't play guitar really well and you're in a tight pinch time. I love using this to kind of put the ideas down. And if I do need a guitar player to come in to kind of replicate or just to replay what I did, I can always do that. But this is just a great placeholder. And I ended up tweaking and getting the sound that I like that I actually just want to keep. So let's go ahead and take a listen. So the cool thing is with the Electric Sunburst, it has the strumming already incorporated into that. So you just basically have to play in the chords and it'll do the strumming, which works out great. So I've got I have the amp section of that turned off so that I can use the Slate Digital Overloud or the Overloud amp emulation. And yeah, we're using some Tube Screamer, using this Marcus 2 lead amp and running it through this cabinet here. And I just basically cycled through some presets till I found something that sounded really good. And then once I had that, this is without it. You can barely hear it. So the amp is adding a lot of that gain. And then to give it a nice vintage glow, I'm using XLN Audio's RC20. Love this plugin. It does such a great job of adding texture to sound. So here we're adding some wobble effect, which is really kind of just detuning. And then we have some of the distortion and some tape saturation with some noise. So this is without it. and just some minor EQing. And this filter is going to be coming into play with my second phase where I'm doing a lot of automating. Then we've got a sidechain compressor on this guitar that's going to allow it to duck every time the kick is being played. So when you hear the kick, the guitar ducks and then it slowly comes back in. It's a great way to add some movement and life to this guitar part, being that it's kind of stagnant and just playing over and over. And then I thought, how cool would it be if we decided to go somewhere with the progression for the pre-chorus? Now, I sung the pre-chorus over the same progression and then later changed the arrangement to the melody that I sung. So let's just take it from the pre-chorus. I feel like I'm losing again, but not this time. I'll keep on striving till the end. So that progression here, we're holding it longer. Now, I wouldn't have made that decision just based on the demo skeleton alone. It was the melody that helped me kind of realize, man, this would be cool if I went here and added this nice little buildup because it sits really well with the melody and it just helps deliver the chorus very well. So that's the kind of thing that the melodies, once I start focusing on that, it really helps kind of navigate where I'm gonna go with the arrangement. So as you can see here, we start to add, and then we get to our chorus, which then explodes. Now, a lot of the elements are still in the original demo. So here's our chorus for in the demo section. And so what we're missing is that nice beefy low end, and that's why I added the 808. So here's our new chorus. And we have that cool little pause there in the arrangement. I felt that, and it just felt really good to be like boom, boom, ga, right? Just to have that, break this apart and add some angst to it. So I thought that was really neat. We also added some crashes, some crash cymbals to really help announce this section. I also do the same thing with the effects here. We'll get to more of that in a second. But yeah, and this chorus is now just exploding because of the difference in the contrast between the new pre-chorus and the verses. So now when I go back into my next section here, the next verse, what are we doing? We're stripping things back down again. I took all the drum, eliminated some of the drum loops, stuff like that. I took the bass back out. So we've got this nice big explosive chorus, and then we just come right back down to, bringing the dynamics right down to the vocal, the kick, clap, and the guitar. Always outnumbered, but never outgunned when it's time to rise. Feeling like I'm going in the lion's den tonight. I feel like I'm losing again. And then as I start to build, I can incorporate new elements here that aren't present in the earlier part of the arrangement. So harmonies or adding maybe a new instrument could be really helpful to start adding more of that dynamics. And then for the second chorus, we then double it. So we go right back into that. And then the second half of the chorus, we're adding a new instrument, which is this nice arpeggiated synth. And some new background vocals. So let's play that. So it's quite a journey going from that second chorus now to this bridge section where everything breaks down and we're on a whole new planet. We've got some, Sergeant Pepper Mellotron flutes happening, and what on earth is going on? So this section is just a great way to diverge from the intensity that we just left from the second chorus. And again, when we look at the demo, my demo skeleton, I had just a placeholder for the bridge, which was just the beat in the guitars. And so again, I thought, okay, I wanna just kind of make things a little bit more spacey and have a really cool ethereal like type of vibe here. So there's where I'm incorporating another arcade plugin by Output, and that's creating some really cool, this really cool guitar riff. And once I triggered that sample, I was like, oh, that's great. I actually just worked the chords around that. So what we have are the pads just being filtered out. Now here's a helpful tip for you. If you're having a hard time trying to decide where should I go chord progression wise or just tonally for the bridge, try playing your chorus progression backwards. That can sometimes be interesting and come up with really cool ideas and inspire you to go in another direction for the bridge. It's sometimes I do that and it helps. And other times I just start to figure out, okay, if I'm leaving the chorus on a specific chord, what would be a good transition from there? And obviously the bridge is somewhere where it just takes a step outside of what we've been listening to, whether it's the verse or the chorus progression, or it can sometimes just be a breakdown, just a drums breakdown. But here I wanted to really be spaced out. So we have these, the pads, then we have the guitar also playing. Just being filtered out. And then halfway through, we introduced the cool Mellotron flutes. I'm using the Native Instruments Contact Factory Library under the Vintage section in the Mellotron category. And then we go right back into the turnaround I did for the pre-chorus. And we're back into the finishing choruses. So with the new arrangement, we're kind of clocking in around like 3 minutes and 15. And then when you look back at our skeleton, we were about 2:30. And that's cool because we were nudging things over. We doubled some choruses and we added a lengthier bridge. And that's why it's kind of good to be able to navigate having the melody and being flexible with your arrangement can be really helpful to kind of get the end results that you're looking for. That's really part of my first phase where the melodies kind of help driving and navigating where I should be going throughout my whole arrangement. Then I come to adding the automation. This is the automation phase. This is where I really go into detail, and this is probably the most intensive part of my process. I save this for last, and I don't want to get hung up on trying to do this part first, because if I don't have a great melody bed to work with, I'm kind of wasting time tinkering around with like, well, I think the snare could do this really cool thing and it evaporates into thin air and creates some, frozen yogurt, whatever. But I want to save all the cool tricks. And if I'm having an itch, then I'm like, oh, this would be cool if this section did this. Just write it down or put a voice memo and say, I want to do this at bar, 49, do something really cool with the drums. Get that out of your system, but make sure you have the priority down first, which would be the melody and the arrangement. Once I have that down, I can then go back and do some really cool things that are going to help create texture. So for instance, I then copied my verse track here, so the vocal melody. I went ahead and duplicated that track and added an extra track here. It's the same vocal melody, but I'm using this plugin by Isotope called Vocal Synth 2. And I had this in the audio mode, and I like creating some texture along with my vocal. And that's just me personally. So I have Biovox, vocoder, and some of the Polyvox, which is great in shifting the formats. And add some distortion, chorus, widen this up. And what happens is when I combine the two, it adds a really nice layer of texture with my vocal. but never outgone when it's time to rise. So I just kind of want to blend the two together. Numbered. I can feel it, and this is without it. Numbered, but never outgone when it's. This is with it. Numbered, but never outgone when it's time to rise. So yeah, I like now that I start adding things like that. I start doing some cool things where we can do some vocal production, but some tweaking here that can add some tension, such as this distorted voice here. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the piece that I'm saying, I'm just taking that part, duplicating it on another track, just duplicating that. And then we're using, I'm tuning it using this plugin called Little Alter Boy and bringing the formats down so it has a really cool new texture, adding some compression. And then some EQ. But the overdrive, this chorus, and this digital distortion is adding some drama. And the way I'm doing it is I'm actually automating all of this. So I want the digital distortion to really add this crazy crunch. And when you go down in bit rate with digital distortion, it really is a form of compression, and it's just adding that sound way, way in front of the picture. So I love that, like it's haunting and feeling like it's getting closer and closer and closer. So I'm automating that, and I'm also automating the on and off of the overdrive and the chorus as well. So as you can see, this is where I spend a lot of time making sure I'm adding all these cool little textures, automating the volume from this and widening it up and doing all these really cool things. So here's what it does to the arrangement. I stand in my ground. So as I mentioned, this is where I get really detailed, and I take my time in going through all the sections and making sure that I'm doing some really cool stuff, not overdoing it, because it's important to not also get lost in the tunnel vision of tweaking and doing these things. You got to make sure that it fits in with the context of the whole picture. So listening it from top to bottom several times and feel like, oh, this feels like it needs to, come in here, and things like that could be really helpful. So you might have noticed from this video is I'm moving pretty quickly when it comes to going from a demo to a final song. And I'm usually working at this speed a lot because I have multiple songs and multiple projects that I'm working on with deadlines. You may find yourself in a similar situation if you have an album or an EP that you're working on. And as a matter of fact, I think one of the best things you can do for yourself as an artist is to put out an EP. It's going to allow you to take your music to the next level. There's a lot of challenges involved, and it's definitely going to help you grow as an artist. You won't be overwhelmed with trying to put enough content to maybe fill an album, but yet you'll have enough content to attract and build a fan base from when creating an EP. As a matter of fact, Graham and I got together and put together and produced a whole EP called The Good Life. But not only that, we documented the whole process and formulated a course called the EP Blueprint that walks you through step by step of the whole process, planning it out, recording it, producing it, mixing it, and then properly promoting it and successfully releasing your EP. Some of the biggest hurdles that artists face is knowing where to even begin into creating that process. So we mapped it all out for you step by step. Now, this course is currently open for new members, but only for a limited amount of time. So be sure to visit recordingrevolution.com/EP Blueprint or click the link below in the description box to join. We're also going to be including some live Q&As. So there's going to be live Q&A calls for all the members of this course so that we can personally help you take that next step forward while you're creating your EP. We're also going to be having a challenge with some amazing prizes as an incentive to finally get that EP that you've been trying to make done this year. You don't want to miss out. So this is going to be open for just a limited amount of time. Be sure to visit recordingrevolution.com/EP Blueprint or click the link below in the description box to join. Hey, if any of the videos that we've shared this past month has been helpful, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. And hopefully, I get to see you inside the EP blueprint. Thanks for watching, and take care.